The Stoics want to remind people that time before us and time after us is so expansive that our little lifespans are but the blink of an eye or a single breath to God.
Mm.
So, remember that, be grateful for it, and uh, don't take anything too seriously because all the material things, as you mentioned, YouTube channel, money, wealth, are going to wash away. But your personal energy is going to really be what people remember you as.
My guest on the Freedom Pack podcast today is Maclin, an artist, a poet, a thinker, the author of this book behind me here, Providence, which we're going to dive into today. Maclin, it's been a long time coming. We've been back and forth for a couple of years now, but it's
Yeah,
it's uh, it's amazing to finally have you on the show and to be doing this.
absolutely. Thanks for having me, man. And I remember you reaching out a while ago, and it just never came to be. I think I moved out of Los Angeles about the time you messaged me, and then 2 years went by. I got an email from you just 2 weeks ago now, and here we are.
Well, these things tend to work out for the best, so I'm glad that we're here. Um, as you mentioned there, a lot's happened since I first reached out to you in your life, and it looks very different now.
Hmm.
And I've got so much I want to get into in this book behind me. But just to set the scene for the audience, give everyone a little bit of context. There was one poem of yours that I thought just teed up this perfectly. It is, you say, "I'll never sell my soul to be successful, but I will give my life to make my dreams come true." And it got me thinking, if we flash back a couple of years, you
Hmm.
were the host of one of the biggest podcasts in the world. You were living in what you described as a very Hollywood house.
Hmm.
It's no secret that you were housemates with Logan Paul, one of your longtime best friends, and for a
Hmm.
lot of people, it'd be very very easy in that position to let their ego run wild, get caught up in that sort of Hollywood fame game, and grab at loads of opportunities that I'm sure were falling at your door. And just to reflect on that poem there about never selling your soul to be successful, but
Hmm.
giving your life to make your dreams come true. When you were surrounded by all that, how did you stay true to yourself?
That's such a multi-layered question, because I think in that time period, I was in Los Angeles for a little over 2 years and surrounded by so many social media people that one of their main goals was to promote their personal image online. So in many ways, I had to determine which elements of my personal image I wanted to share with the world, as well as what I wanted to hold back and keep personal to me. So in that fun game of learning who I am on a very public stage, I had a lot of trial and errors that I got to experience firsthand through myself, as well as the people around me who are just testing things, trying things, seeing who they are in the moment, and reflecting back on that and getting feedback from either a gigantic audience or just the people closest to us. And staying true to yourself is definitely a battle that never stops. And you don't have to be on a podcast. You don't have to be a content creator. You could just be a human being walking around the world. And I think the one big component that helped me keep everything the way I'd like it to be in my life was that before I moved to Los Angeles, I spent a lot of time really diving deep into myself and doing the shadow work, as they call it, or the deep personal healing and understanding self knowledge path to understand who I was at the core.
Yeah, and so unpacking that a bit, you've transitioned from this Hollywood household with all the sort of luxuries and trappings that come with being surrounded with people
Hmm.
like that. You were interacting with very famous people on the podcast. I'm sure there were parties non-stop going on around you and loads of opportunities. You transitioned from that sort of crazy environment to a very simple way of living. It was almost like, I think you
Mhm.
described it as just you, your laptop, and wherever you really wanted to go. How did you find that transition from going from one end of the scale to the other?
That transition was wild. Culture shock is really the way I would describe it. Living in a house, one with five other people, is it's a life experience for anyone. So it doesn't matter what's going on. If you move out of a house with six people and you move into a place by yourself, there's a lot of commotion, and then all of a sudden it's just dead silence. So yeah, the way I would describe it is culture shock. I had a hard time getting motivated. It felt strange to not be in Los Angeles. I also moved back so I'm currently living in Cleveland. I moved back here, and the weather started changing and winter was on the horizon. So I went from warm, sunny Los Angeles, California to a cold, dark, gray skies, silent, semi-lonely place. And I do still have friends here, and they're great and an awesome support group. Um, but it's just a different pace of life, a lot slower. So best way to describe it is rev your car up, start driving 100 miles an hour, and slam on the brakes and see what happens.
Is there anything that I know you're not in that sort of lifestyle anymore, as we've talked about. You've made that transition, but are there any lessons that you took from, obviously, being around, a character like a Logan Paul who goes on to just the top level of fame, and seeing everything that changes with him, and obviously you knew him obviously long, long, long before that, and now, are there any
Mm-hmm.
lessons you picked up along the way that stick with you now?
Yeah, and I've spoken on this before. I think the big thing is determination and commitment. And if you want to grow, if you want to maintain a world level persona, you got to work. And it's not, oh, I don't feel like it today. And this is the same in any industry, truly. It's just if you want to be the best, you gotta play the game, and you gotta play hard, and you cannot give up, because the determination will take you from nothingness to, maybe over the course of 2, 3, 4, 10 years, all of a sudden you're at the highest level. And once you get to that point, there's really no turning back. So um, I think in general, there's so many lessons I learned that it might be helpful if you have like a specific area you're interested in. But my learning experience it's unparalleled. I often think about how few people in the world get to experience what it's like to be adjacent to true fame. And once you get a taste of that and you get a feel for it, one, you get to see how it affects you personally. And then two, you get to make a decision whether or not that's actually the route you'd like to take in life.
Yeah, and just jumping on that, you sort of, when I was going through the comment sections of podcasts that you featured on, those who were fans of Maclin, they were very, they were quite diehard fans. They sort of rode with
Mm-hmm.
you. They really wanted to hear more from you, and so you knew that there was that avenue to go down. You could have
Mm-hmm.
kept podcasting, and you could have taken yourself to, crazy, crazy heights in the game. But what was it? And you've spoken about this before, that you aren't really interested in sort of pop culture. You aren't interested
Mm-hmm.
in social media fame. What is it about that you just does not appeal to you that would appeal to so many?
Well, as far as the pop culture thing, I think daily drama or hot flash news topics just are so temporary that the lasting impact of kind of talking about those things isn't necessarily where I see my attention and energy going to. Um, but yeah, I have a slower pace of life. I like to dive deep, and I like to really dig under the skin of people to try to understand what's going on inside of them. And that's a bit more investigative or anthropological
Yeah.
and biographical, as opposed to what's the latest in the YouTube world, which is still interesting. And I'm still keeping up to date on all those things because I think this internet medium that we've all discovered is a way to really, make your impact on the world. I just want mine to be for something that has a little bit more depth or purpose that can uh, do. I guess entertaining is valuable. I think people always need some entertainment to either take them out of their current situation or give themselves something to do. But I like to entertain and just create something that, like I said, has more depth, has more substance behind it.
Well, this is the perfect time to sort of transition into these copious amount of notes I have on your work in front of me. And I think the best way to transition is I wanted to ask you about purpose and how you find that in your art. And I
Mm.
guess the best way to do that and the best visual way is there was a video where it was a viral video where sort of Logan Paul pretended to set fire to your art. And I remember when I
Hmm.
saw that video, it broke my heart really. Just and I did feel sad because I just saw this sort of I just saw what it meant to that's the most compelling part of that video to me is I saw what it meant to you and it really
Hmm.
did break my heart. So on that theme, what does your art and freedom of expression mean to you?
My art and my freedom of expression. I think freedom of expression is almost more important than the art. It's the thing that births the art, right? So, as far as freedom of expression, I'm a person that has, for my entire life, found ways to take my thoughts out of my head and create them in the world, whether that's through video, photo, painting, writing, you name it. I feel it is my purpose to express what's going on between my ears and bring it out into the world. So, freedom of expression, yes, that's like one. I am allowed to do so, right? Like there's nothing stopping me from doing so. The second part of that is freedom, meaning like free flowing, which is a never ending chain of letting out and letting go and releasing into the world, which I find a little bit more powerful because everybody's free to create, but we often impose like restrictions on ourselves. So in my mind, my creation, my expressions are a deep meditation into sometimes things that I can't even see within myself. And as soon as I release those and put them out on a canvas or a page or edit a picture, release a video, whatever that might be, I feel lighter. I feel better. I feel accomplished. I feel like I am activating on the talents that I've developed over the past 15 years. And I know that I have some sort of gift in this world. So if you're not using it, uh, you might as well just stop trying. So if you have a gift, you should use it. Is kind of the thing.
And you certainly do, man. Like I've mentioned obviously this book behind me, Providence. I really really loved it, and my sort of journey into poetry probably isn't as in as depth as maybe yours or typical lovers of poetry out there. I tend to
Hmm.
like sort of like shorter poetry. I like Rupi Kaur or Matt
Hmm.
Haig. These types of small but really impactful pieces, which I think really summarizes your work. And
Hmm.
Providence, I think the definition you've written down for it, that you found is the foreseeing care and guidance of God and nature over the beings of the earth. What compelled you to dive into this subject, and why is providence such a powerful word to you?
Um, there's so many reasons for this one. It's a powerful word, I think, just truly based on the definition. I like to think that nature or God is whatever it is you believe in. I believe there's a higher power. I believe there's something always looking out for us, and that the road ahead of us, no matter which direction we're going, is always laid out for us to be uh, to take us exactly where we're supposed to go based on our intentions and our efforts. Um, I'm guided personally by an attempt to live a truly good life, and that means good in all the things I receive, but also as well as what I'm putting out. So that word, I came across it maybe, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago, about the time I started writing the book. And it was actually for a local charity here in Cleveland. I went to a charity event, and I was just curious about, what Providence actually meant. The charity is called Providence House, and they take care of at-risk children in the community. And I just love the word. The definition caught my attention, and I knew that if I could explain how I view the world, where every little thing we come across is some sort of director or guidance to pursuing our true intentions, I knew I could have something really powerful that would help other people see what I see. So that kind of became the mission. And how do you explain what it's like to have a higher power guiding every single thing you do, in the shortest and simplest form that's digestible and quick reads, but also can hit and strike a chord with someone and make them think deeply, even if it's just 10 words. So each poem is an attempt at doing that.
One of the themes that crops up a lot is you touch on consciousness a lot. For someone who may be brand new to this subject, who's thinking, what is consciousness? If you could even attempt to define it, how would you
Mm.
define consciousness, and sort of what relationship does it have to the sort of surrounding physical world we find ourselves in and we can touch, we can feel?
The definition of consciousness is a tough one. I think pretty much every modern philosopher and philosopher of old is really trying to define what that is.
Mm,
In my understanding, I don't know if I could truly explain what consciousness is, but I can say what it means to be conscious. And that is just an awareness of the present moment, of all things internal and external in your local area.
mm.
So the space around you to the best of your ability, receiving all the external stimulus, matching it with the internal stimulus, and recognizing how those two are interacting.
I mentioned there about the physical world, and there was one line you wrote. It said, "Build that we build within an artificial world we cannot inhabit." That's pretty
Mm.
deep, and that's a hard one to get your head around. But how would you sort of elaborate on what you meant by that?
That one is about the digital world, of course, the ones and zeros. Every day that we add more hard drive space, we're adding more real estate to the digital world, and we keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper and building these mega structures online. However, our physical bodies can never truly touch what is happening inside of those computers. So that part of the book is a bit of a departure from the rest, but it's
Mm,
still important because of, this modern age that we are all spending, anywhere from 1 hour to some people up to 10 hours a day just on these screens and phones and computers. And it's a bit of a lashing out at the digital space.
So another really powerful one in this walk-in section of the book.
Uh-huh.
You say you talk about taking the scenic route to a simple life, and I think personally, I reflect back on that, and I think that for me, especially at a young age, I was always very goal orientated. I was very, I had an end vision for everything, and I'd sort of set my mind on it, and I'd be trying to race through everything and trying to
Hmm.
hit a goal. And I can't remember who said it to me. I think it was when I was interviewing Garanga Das, the monk, and he was talking about this idea versus the journey versus the destination. And he told me that we're often rushing to the destination to try and get the view that we wanted. We want to get to the peak to see the view, but we forget that a lot of great views can be seen on the way up that we rush
Of course.
past.
Hmm.
So for you, taking the scenic route, as you will, how important do you think it is for us in a world that's very fast now? I mean, digital media is, you've got to capture someone's attention in 10 seconds or they move on. How important is it for us to slow down?
It's all personal. It depends on what trajectory you're on.
Mm,
And if you're, something we talked about earlier is if you want to be a social media giant or a internet media giant,
mm,
you got to put the pressure on. And of course, you can dictate that pressure. You can do one a week, you can do one a month, but super high quality. It's same equation we've seen for years and years, quality versus quantity. Some work depending on, what it is the product that you're putting out. So as far as taking it slow, my personal stance is that I know I have these large goals I'd like to accomplish. I knew I wanted to write a book, but I didn't force myself into an exact date on doing that because I never knew when I would feel like I was actually finished.
mm,
It only happened on my 27th birthday when I was like, okay, maybe I just say from 22 to 25, this is a collection of works that I feel contains a single theme. And in retrospect, as I got to the top of the mountain, I was able to look down at the path I took and say, wow, that was a fun journey. Let me collect all of that and contain it in one single object. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think the mentality that you had is probably something that was indoctrinated into you. We
mm.
all have it where it's, you have homework, you have an assignment, you have a test, and then you pass the test. And then because you pass the test, you get to go to the next level. So we have this schooling mechanism that teaches us to always, try to get to the next place so we can get to the next level. And then you kind of have to unlearn that after you finish school, because it's not always that cut and dry in life. And sometimes you don't know what level you're on and you don't even know what level you're going to. But that's why every day, I have some sort of practice with any medium that I work in. Typically, I say that my artistic medium is every piece of art or every style. So as long as I'm working on that, I'm constantly teaching myself new things and learning new lessons. And eventually, I'll put all those together and I'll understand exactly uh, what my simple life is, because I've done all the hard stuff of the learning and now I've mastered my craft. And once I've mastered it, yes, it's still difficult to do some of the things I might need to accomplish, but it'll be much simpler for me to do them because of how much experience I have.
And on that thread of journey, we spoke before we went on air about the process to publishing this book and how it
Mm-hmm.
started off as an organic process and sort of made its way to the product it is now. But how sort of cathartic was the journey for you in getting your thoughts down on paper? Because I know you like to write down physically. I know you've
Yep.
even gone as far as creating your own notebooks. You
Yep.
believe in writing down. What is it about that sort of process that is so powerful? And there we are, right in front of us.
Yep. It's good. Well, I mean, like I said before, it's all a meditation. So to go from cutting pieces of paper, punching holes in 10 of them, attaching a little cardboard back and sliding two rings through it, just making myself something that I can express my thoughts in already, it's in itself is a way that I can make something that will encourage me to create more. So I believe in the book. I said it. I hope it's in the book, but every creative expression carries with it the seed of the next.
Mm,
So any thought I put down, anything I make, it's just constantly carrying me to the next thing.
mm. I mentioned a lesson that I was taught by Garanga Das there, and I
Hmm.
remember he spoke to me about another one, and it was on this idea that we need to spend less time searching for things and more time being. I think the example we were talking about at the time is I'd just spoken to a longevity expert named David Sinclair, and
Hmm.
I was telling Garanga Das about this, and he said, "With the problem with longevity experts, or this topic that seems to fascinate and grip so many people, is that these people spend so much time trying to figure out how to live forever that they sort of forget to live at all along the way.
It's the work-life balance, of course,
Mm.
that it doesn't matter what your pursuit is. Yes, that one is a very direct example, and it's kind of the most ironic of them all.
Yeah.
But in contrast, perhaps they are living a valuable life. Yes, there are these little things that scientist might be studying. And David Sinclair is an amazing, amazing researcher, and his studies have fascinated me. So
Mm.
I think, if anything, his dedication to this craft is his life. And because he's living this life and he's the one that's going down every single wormhole and trying to pull out all this information, he's bringing it to the rest of the world and saying, this is something that we can all learn from. Um, and that's so valuable for all of us. And he might be sacrificing himself. He might drive himself crazy. He might die young because of how hard he studied.
Mm.
But at the end of it, we'll probably find incredible examples of what his research has done in longevity studies. And, people live 120, 130, 150 years.
Mm.
Um, so yes, I think do your best to live every day, make those little moments. My thought the other day was I should just take Instagram off my phone, because every time I go for a 5-minute scroll, maybe I do that 10 times a day. That's 50 minutes, and I'm 50 minutes behind on something else I could have done. I could have been at the beach. I could have been going for a walk. All little slow moments that impact my life in a personal way, as opposed to constantly absorbing other people's experiences.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. This is something I was actually talking about a couple of days ago with my therapist about social media and why I'm trying. It's hard because of sort of the nature of what we do, but I'm trying to sort of severely cut back or at least give it up for a while, because what I find is with something like anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
I think we're not designed to take in as much bad news as we take in. A good
Mm-hmm.
example I read of this, I think it was Dr. Phil who was talking about this, but he said that when he was younger, if someone in a different state to him was eaten alive by a crocodile, he
Mm-hmm.
probably would have never heard that happened. But now he's probably going to see a video of it an hour after it happened online. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're not designed to be able to cope with not just our own bad experiences, but every person on the planet's bad experiences all at once.
Exactly. That's in the book as well. It's called Instant Digital Empathy.
Mm.
And it goes for the low moments as well as the high moments. If you're sharing in people's successes, but you're not a contributing factor or a component to any of that, or an accessory or whatever it might be, you feel for them, which is amazing, because it's human empathy. A lot of people have that, bar a few people, some do not. But for the most part, if you're looking at stuff online, you see, cute puppy or whatever inspiring tale, it can lift you up. But on the same token, you're going to come across everything you just mentioned, all the horror stories.
Mm.
And, you can hear about anything from any place in the world at any time, and you can search for it. So sometimes we get caught up in these cycles of, I know there's people in the world that love horror movies. I'm
Mm.
not one of them,
Neither mine.
but for some reason they continue to seek those out, because it gives them some sort of feeling that they've latched onto. So I hope that we don't keep going through this spiral of letting others impact our emotions. And the biggest part of this all is the switching of them and how fast they happen.
Mm.
Typically, if you heard bad news, you had time to react, but now you're going to hear that bad news of the man being eaten by a crocodile, and you're going to scroll down, and you're going to see your favorite sports team win. You're going to see the flexing millionaire with his Lamborghini. You're going to scroll down, you're going to see some hot chick, and you're going to scroll down after that, and you're going to see who knows what. So the constant switching of emotional states is super damaging.
And that's a really, really hard thing to combat. And I think some people can deal with it a lot better than others. I know I certainly, personally, I can't. I struggle
Yeah.
to deal with it, and so I have to take decisions to sort of design my life in a certain way. And I know you talk about designing your own sort of lifestyle. I think, yeah,
Hmm.
one of the poems, you say that routine will guide me, but so will a rut. Medicine should heal me, but so will a cut. I love that one. And what can you speak to on uh, designing your own lifestyle and how that's looked for you?
This is just a mindfulness practice. This is something that Zen masters might teach, and I kind of liken it to some sort of computer engineering program or software. So one of the things I did, and I still do to some degree, but mostly in college, while I was taking my computer engineering classes, software engineering classes, was I would run programs. I would run my Good Morning program, and that included doing some breathing, some stretching, some push-ups, drinking water, taking my vitamins, going to the kitchen, washing my face with cold water, and this, but it was all laid out. So in the morning, instead of saying I have 10 things to do, I just ran the executable program of good morning. But in that sense, I had to design what worked for me, and that might not work for me if I had to wake up a little bit earlier or a little bit later. So it's constantly changing, but ultimately, I'm gonna know what's working best for me, and I want to make time to do the things that I want to do. So with some element of sacrifice and some element of discipline, you can mix these together and put together a lifestyle that actually functions to make me feel like I'm happily living my life.
Yes, and on that sort of what we're talking about designing a lifestyle, I mentioned there about cutting out social media, but I think a big thing for me, especially when I first came out of university, um, I had to really look at the circle of people that were around me. Um,
Hmm.
and I think a lot of people fall into this trap of sort of like a cost sunk fallacy where they're friends with someone for 20 years and then it sort of becomes apparent to them that this person isn't really serving me. It's not feeding me in the right way. It's not pushing me towards who I want to be. But they've been my friend for 20 years. I can't just get rid of them. And I
Hmm.
remember I was in that exact situation coming out of university. And I remember thinking, as selfish as it may feel, I think at times you've got to be a little bit ruthless with those things.
Hmm. Well, again, to bring in the modern age, these relationships we can maintain because of how easily we can connect.
Yeah.
So some of the times you have to, look around you and say, well, I only text this person one time, but they cause a lot of stress for me, or we just don't see the same eye to eye. But I still want to like their pictures on Instagram, or I still want to, retweet tweets, whatever it might be. And you feel kind of stuck. But yeah, picking your friends, and it can be tough. Sometimes it's worth working out and being honest. Like, you don't want to just run away from your problems.
Mhm.
But I definitely wouldn't recommend trying to talk a wolf out of eating you. So it might work sometimes, it might not work other times. There's no cut and dry method. Um, but be willing to make changes and let people go. And also, I think one thing is letting people in. A lot of people make their friends and they say, well, I'm good. I don't need any more. Um, but who knows? Something could happen and things could change. So you just be willing to. This is where the self reflection comes in, and saying, I still care about this person. I'm still interested in giving effort to them. Is it reciprocated?
And in your personal experience, what is how do you treat your sort of inner circle? Is it quite a close circle that you? And again, for someone in your position, I imagine sometimes it's hard to know, who's getting close to you for the right reasons, or who may be,
Hmm.
looking at how this could benefit them. How have you sort of navigated your closer circle, and what qualities do you try to surround yourself with?
I aim to surround myself with creative people, like in general. That's kind of my goal. I think people that are willing to express themselves are also willing to do internal work to become the best versions of themselves. Sometimes that's true, sometimes that's not true. But ultimately, I'm looking for people that I have shared interest in. I think that's typical for any human being. as far as the negative people or the people that might just be coming in to try to get something. Doesn't matter who you are, where you are. There's, sometimes people want things from other people, and you have to determine what, at least in my case, I determine is it mutually beneficial for us to be friends? And if, I can recognize right away that they want something from me, it might also be beneficial for me to want something from them. And in that case, it could be transactional. This is something, going back to the beginning of the conversation that Hollywood taught me. You see it in so many different shades and colors. And, I put together a pretty good picture of what it looks like when someone's coming into my life for nefarious reasons. And I don't give too much energy to that. So just, experience makes it all so clear, but you can't know until you've experienced it. So, uh, it's, it's a fun game. I'll say that.
A theme that seems to crop up a lot in not only your work but in sort of podcasts or interviews I've listened to with yourself. This word destiny crops up. To what extent do you think that our sort of individual fate is already decided? Is that a thing that you believe in, or do you think it's fate is almost almost a string of infinite sort of choices we make? It's a tough one to get your head around, fate,
I
but
see.
what is your stance on it?
For sure. So you could look forward at fate and say this whole road is determined for me, or you could look backwards and say that, oh, it looks like of all the choices I made, my fate was it led me to this point. I prefer a wider viewpoint, which is why this book is actually in the Amazon category, free will and determinism philosophy. A direct shot at Plato. I believe it was Plato who said you shouldn't mix poetry and philosophy. So I just wanted to give a little cheeky head rub to him on that one. But I'm in the understanding that we live in a very multiverse type world, where looking forward, there is an infinite number of possibilities, and it is I who determines that. But it's up for me to speak with the man at the end of the road, who is myself, who is the last page of the book that I know is me. I know for a fact I had a birth date. I know for a fact I had an end date. So that guy is out there somewhere. He's further down in the timeline than I am, but he knows everything I've accomplished. So in my mind, I speak with that man and I ask him to look back and say, what was the best route we could have taken to make you the happiest that you could be? And that is my guiding force. That is my, well, at least I'll say one of my higher powers. I think he can be in communication with the world around me. And, after he passes over to the other side, whatever that might be, he is an infinite being attached not to time, because there's nothing binding him to no gravity to bind him to this plane. And it's through that kind of communication that the many fates that I might have can be really highlighted into one. And I do my best to proceed on that route.
This is very interesting because you mentioned the beginning and the end there. There was one of the poems you said, it's all life or death, but there's still the or. Something is in the middle. What is the or, in your opinion?
The all. Well, this goes a little bit further than a multiverse concept, I guess. I guess it would be the container of, imagine that my entire life is oh boy, I love trying to describe this. I know that my life, like I said, it has a front page and it has an end page, front cover, back cover. So in that regard, someone might be able, from a higher dimension, might be able to pull my book out and look through the entire thing, and on any page they could say, this is going to happen to him, and look down on me. But in that library, there are also an infinite number of books that contain an infinite number of possibilities of what it is that I can do. So they could pull out any of those books and say, this is what's going to happen.
Mm. Yeah, this is again, this is wild to get your head around. It's one of those concepts, and you this idea of life and death. There's a part on death in this book, and I wonder. It's a very stoic practice. Is it Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, even the modern
Mm-hmm.
Stoics, like Ryan Holiday, Massimo Pigliucci, they all talk about the importance of sort of meditating on your own mortality. Is
Mm-hmm.
that something that you are able to do? Because for a lot of people, and I know a lot of people that love reading Stoicism, but this is the one they get stuck on because nobody likes the idea of facing their own mortality.
Well, you can't say nobody. There's some people that like to dig into that.
Mm,
I think it's one of the most universal truths. I
mm,
already said it twice, but there's a beginning and there's an end. And if
yeah.
you try to deny that there's an end, you're lying to yourself about 50% of your own personal truth at the
Mm,
highest level. That's one of the reasons why I put it in the book so that I can bring death into conversation in a light way. I look at, I'm looking outside through this window and I see a giant tree standing in front of me. And I know that it took this tree its entire life to get that tall. And eventually one day it's going to fall. And when that tree falls, it'll be digested back into earth and it'll give all of its nutrients back to the planet around it. So I think, from a high level viewpoint, that's exactly what's going to happen to me.
mm.
My resources will be dispersed to the world. My wealth, my knowledge, my everything will go back into it. And to deny myself of that concept denies myself of the power to think backwards in time uh, from my last day, basically.
Yeah, it's a very tough one to try and meditate on, but I think it's very important. I personally have always struggled with it, but I tried with a friend this practice I heard about where you write your own obituary and then you read it out
Mm,
loud. And
hmm.
the benefit of doing that, and that I do have it somewhere in this room, I keep it because when I wrote it and I read it back, the way I was describing myself was what the life I wanted to, the impression I wanted to leave on the world. So I was writing things like, he was a kind person, he was a generous person, he was loving, he wanted to help other people. I wasn't writing, he had 1 million YouTube subscribers, he made this much money, he had this car, he had this house, and
Hmm.
it really puts into perspective what is important in life. And so I think that in that sense, meditating on the end is very beneficial to finding out who you are and who you want to be.
Yes, because a lot of times you mentioned you wanted to be generous, but a lot of times you might find that in your daily life you aren't
Mm,
generous, or you aren't as generous as you'd like to be. I'm sure
mm,
you are very generous, but it is that's an incredible practice, and to just sit with the idea of truly not existing is something that you can only see the last little bit. You can't really imagine what's on the other side, but
mm,
it's a powerful practice to bring you back into this place and be grateful for what it is. And the Stoics want to remind people that time before us and time after us is so expansive that our little lifespans are but the blink of an eye or a single breath to God.
mm.
So remember that, be grateful for it, and uh, don't take anything too seriously because all the material things, as you mentioned, YouTube channel, money, wealth, are going to wash away. But your personal energy is going to really be what people remember you as.
Ah, beautifully said, man. And I won't put this practice on you because it's obviously something that takes a lot of time. But
Oh, I've already done it.
so what are the so Macklin's funeral? What are the types of things that you would like to think are said about you?
Um, I one of the sayings is always, if he said it, he did it.
Hmm.
I really believe in, if I said I was going to make this thing, I was going to do that thing. If I said I was going to be this person, I was that person. It's a bit hard to go verbatim for exactly what I wrote, but it's, I think everybody kind of aims for the same thing. He lived a happy life. He brought joy and peace to others. His love was always felt when he was nearby, and in times of need, when someone had to be there, it was him. So I've taken it upon myself to take this scenic route so that I can embody all those characteristics and not get so caught up in the physical or numerical goals.
You gave the analogy of the tree falling,
Mm-hmm.
and throughout this book, you do mention trees, and talk about the trees. The word tree pops up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
What is a when you look at a tree? What does it symbolize? What does it represent to you?
Well, let me tell you, because I just wrote a new one about this.
Amazing.
It is this is a exclusive. This is from my free poems experience, where you basically submit a word to me and I write you an email back of the poem.
Mm.
Um, and it's pretty challenging, but this is called Time and Life and Death. Trees grow from a single seed. They spread their branches, their roots, and their offspring far and wide. Yet the trees never move their feet. They grow tall and strong, providing home, shelter, shade, and fruit to many other creatures nearby. Everything the trees need arrive directly to them. Eventually, after a life well lived, the structure of a tree must succumb to gravity. The earth happily catches the fallen body and shares the collected resources with the surrounding family. Thus is the human life. So, in my mind, this tree grows, its branches spread far and wide. Those are all the possible ways that we've extended our energy through the world. Each branch being a major directive effort point, and the leaves are, the more branches you grow, the more leaves you have. The leaves collect resources for the tree. That is the energy source. Um, our leaves money, possibly. Um, are, what is this giant trunk? If you're willing to dig deep and really strive to reach high in the sky, your tree will grow very tall. Sometimes you get planted in bad soil and you have a hard time. Some trees get cut down young. Sometimes we plant trees just to harvest. Sometimes, you know, there's an entire world and ecosystem living in one of these trees, and other times it's a barren, desolate tree living in the middle of a field that no other trees are around. So take any of these and apply them to a human life, and you'll find that there are so many analogies and similarities.
That is absolutely beautiful, man. And I think Plato was dead wrong. He took an L on that one. Who said you can't mix poetry with philosophy, man? That is absolutely beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
You so on this theme of trees, there's a section all on nature. What does nature? Not only what does nature mean to you, but what
Mm-hmm.
does your own personal relationship look like with nature?
I like to add the word Mother Nature in front of that
Okay.
when that's why I capitalize nature
Mm.
in all the writings. This is actually a practice that the existentialist poets used to do. I believe Whitman and Emerson and Ralph Waldo Emerson. What the hell's the other guy's name? Uh, anyway, these guys. I actually don't read much poetry, if I'm being honest. It's not my favorite, but one of the things these guys talk about was the way that nature communicates with us. And same thing with seeing these trees. As I'm walking around, I might be asking myself a question, and I can be illuminated to the answer by a bird landing in a tree, by a seed being, falling here and landing in a plot of mud. You name it, there might be some sort of answer that was uh, coming up from the question that you were internally asking yourself. This is when going back to the conversation of consciousness, matching the external stimulus with the internal state is really valuable. There's a passage in this book where I talk about, a tree limb falls as I walk on this path, or a tree limb falls as I question my thoughts. Whose path am I next to cross? Just this idea of recognizing something happening external to me and how it matches up with what's happening to me. Is there an intelligence in nature that is making that tree fall? Is there a way to communicate through gravity? Is there a way to uh, have this earthly being, this creature that lives and breathes in the expanse of space that has been habitable for millions of years, that is some form of intelligence that tells us and guides us and provides the answers for us? It's quite the meditation. My answer is yes, which is why in the book I also say, be open to omens and commit to decisions. So recognize there's things happening around you that are actually happening for you, and commit.
You recommend keeping a garden. I wonder if you meant that in the literal sense or you meant it metaphorically.
Up to interpretation.
Do you keep a literal garden personally?
Currently, I do not. I have an apartment right now. I don't really have
Pretty hard then, yeah.
yeah, it's pretty hard, but in the future I will. I used to work in a greenhouse, and I just know that raising plants and taking care of something that I wanted to see yield a product or produce was very powerful. Same with the business. Gardens are just like a business, and it's the most fundamental human way to keep yourself alive.
Because you did your degree in botany, am I right?
That's correct.
How did you find yourself in that situation? That's quite a niche one.
Mm. Yeah, I wish I knew. I started working at the greenhouse when I was in college. I was a sophomore. I loved the opportunity. At the time, I was studying computer science, and it simply wasn't scratching the itch.
Hmm.
I've always had a passionate interest for the natural world. The information came easily to me. I recognized that I was interested in it. I also had a vision for myself to own and operate a vineyard winery. Still on the list of things I'd like to accomplish. Um, so getting a basis in that information was really helpful. And yeah, it was a good experience. I wish I had an easier, like a different thing. I
Mm.
saw it, I liked it, changed my major, and said, all right, I'm a botanist now.
And did that come to serve you because you lived on an island at one point, right?
That's correct. I'm actually about to be heading out here soon to head out there.
Mm.
So it's going to be a glorious return. I'm bringing a special guest with me, and she's never been there. I can't wait to bring her. So that'll be fun. But yes, I spent a lot of my childhood, summer times, fall on a small island in Lake Erie, and it has forever changed me. That is what has shown me a very simple life with, uh, the only things really to do are be a kid, go have fun, play outside, and isolate yourself from the world around you. Because when you're on an island, the Italian Spanish word isole, you are isolated from the world. I believe that's Latin as well, probably. But either way, you're isolated, and once again, it allows for internal reflection to see what the hell's going on in your own life.
And whilst you were sort of on this, you began to sort of find sustainable ways to. I think you were making soap at one point, right?
Yeah, that was more of a entrepreneurial testing ground.
Okay.
I wanted to see what it would be like to start a business. I saw a niche in the market up there, handcraft goods, artisan goods, made some awesome soap. It was kind of a callback to what we do on the island. Lake's clear. Why not just wash off in the lake? So I made a company called Lake Bath Soap. And that was truly my first endeavor at being a an entrepreneur, a business owner, someone who's going to go through all the steps to go do the branding, make a commercial, do the website, manage sales, shipping, all that stuff.
It's interesting that you are a person that is obviously very mindful, very reflective, very spiritual, yet very entrepreneurial at the same time. How do those worlds collide, and how does one sort of help the other?
Well, I can say that, the self-reflection thing, what I'm often seeking is creating solutions to problems that I might have, because I know the deeper I dig into myself, the more relatable it'll be to everyone else, which is a major theme throughout the entire book. I dug very deep. I pulled these things out. I share them with everyone, and they seem to have something that they can relate to. Um, so my goal in life is to continue to make, either whether it's products or ideas or buildings or creative experiences, whether that's art or exhibitions, that can improve the quality of life for other people based on my own internal desire. So I know, like I said, if I have this internal desire, it can be enjoyed by others. And then to further that, I know that to run these things, you need money.
Hmm.
So you got to figure out how to monetize these things. You got to figure out how to make a living, so I can continue to do exactly what I'm doing and continue to go down this road of making more things for people to uh, have have their own internal reflection. I know we don't have time for that kind of stuff, so at least give an opportunity or create some sort of reminder for people to do their own personal care.
Yeah, and sustainability is something that's clearly of interest to you, and I think it
Mm.
goes hand in hand with your creativity as well. I think I remember hearing you talk about, all these very creative ideas you would try out. You would try, I think you were talking about maybe tie dyeing clothes with coffee, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
All these sort
Yeah.
of very creative ideas. Why is sustainability so well of so interest to you, and how far does that go? Are you do you see yourself as like very far down that road, or just sort of experimenting and seeing what works for you personally?
I'd say at the moment I've thought very far down the road, but currently I'm just experimenting with different things,
Yeah.
clothing dye, different type of recycled papers, different type of recycled products. I don't enjoy waste. I don't like to leave a giant pile of crap everywhere I go. So I like to take what I make and then use the scraps and to hopefully make something else. Um, and I think that goes for many industries. I think there's probably a ton of ways where we could recycle the byproducts or use whatever came off the line that wasn't properly produced and turn it into something else. Um, so it's just, same thing as the natural world. Anything that falls to the ground is going to be consumed and turned into something else through the natural life cycle, and then the water cycle as nutrients get passed around. Atoms, the entire world is made of atoms. All these atoms get recycled and turned into other things. So why not try to take that into literal terms with every little thing I do?
I wonder. We've talked a lot about sort of philosophical ideas. We've touched on stoicism. We've got very spiritual. How would you,
Mm-hmm.
if you could, how would you define your sort of own personal philosophy? Because I think it's very hard to put a label on it. You seem to you seem to be very open-minded in taking a look at sort of every type of philosophy, and taking what, bits here and there, and sort of forming your own sort of personal philosophy. Is there a way you would define it?
Just to use words we've already used, I'd say poetic stoic.
Hmm.
Um, don't take anything too abruptly. Don't react, don't overreact. You can react, but um, just really taking a good hard look at everything and knowing that it's not always what it seems. There's a fun thing. I know I keep talking about trees, but there's a conversation. I don't know, remember where I heard it, but you look outside, I point at a tree and I say, "Hey, can you see that whole tree?" And you say, "Yes, of course I can see that whole tree." But what you forget is that there's a million other angles of which you could see that tree from. So my personal philosophy on life is be simple, be honest, be true, be good, and allow for allow time for things to run its course, because tomorrow's a new day, and the present moment changes rapidly. So to I don't know what I want to say is just to get frustrated about things. It's not in my wheelhouse. Um, but I strive for a good life. I strive to increase the amount of peace, love, and joy in the people around me. And as long as I'm doing that, I'm doing good.
I think anyone listening or watching or who has read your work would agree that you seem to have a good level of stillness to
Mm-hmm.
you in the way I can see in the way you're answering. Every time I ask a question, you sort of take a breath, you pause for thought. I can see you think deeply about things. And even in the book, you say at the start, you encourage people to take a breath before and after reading each poem.
Mm-hmm.
I spoke to a religious author named John Butler, and I asked him about the concept of stillness and what it meant, and he said that you can't really define stillness. It has no meaning. It has no description. It just is. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's Newton's law of rest,
Hmm.
but it's it. There's so many. I think this goes in the Zen category. So many of these people have talked about still water typically is the clearest. So when the waters get turned up, it gets a little murky at times because you're moving stuff up off the bottom. And then once you seek and find stillness, the waters tend to clear up, and you can see all the way through, and the light gets to every single inch of that body of water. And our bodies are 70 some percent water, so we should probably make light of that.
On this theme of stillness, and you just mentioned it there about you mentioned conflict and the way that you deal with conflict. I remember I think it was in one of your final episodes on Impulsive, where there was a little bit
Mm-hmm.
of conflict between you and the other co-host of the show.
Sure.
And I remember being in awe at the time of how you dealt with the situation, because a lot of people could have been dragged into an argument there, and you had this sort of mindful presence about you where you managed to just keep this level of calm, of level headedness. You were mindful, and you
Mm-hmm.
had this discussion without it having to come to shouting to get your point across. And any sort of criticism or joke, you seem to just let sort of brush off you, and then you would get your point across. I thought it was absolutely
Mm-hmm.
amazing, and I've watched that a couple of times because I remember thinking I want to be more like this.
Mm-hmm.
What is your sort of approach to handling conflict and conflict resolution? Because if anyone can find that video, I would point them towards it because I think it's an exceptional example.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important to know that some people get irate and they start saying things they don't necessarily mean, and that as soon as you start raising your voice, you're really not coming across with your fullest of compassion. And it's my thing to absorb, dissolve, and possibly reflect the most distilled version of what I think is the truth that they're trying to express to me. And then in my response, I'm responding with my personal truth. So it's not easy. It's uncomfortable at times if someone's coming at you, and you want to stand up for yourself. But I think there's ways to be very firm and understand that some people just don't have good emotional control. And once you know that, it's okay, and you let them go for it, and you go.
The last question I'll ask you, I ask every guest on the show who comes on, and this can be anything. It can be your family, it can be your work, whatever. But right now, for Maclin, what makes life worth living?
Right now, I have an empty canvas, in front of me. I released a book I've been working on for 5 years. I have no projects in the works. I have nothing on the slate. The thing that is making my life worth living is figuring out what it is I'm going to paint next.
So we've talked a lot about the book today. We've talked a lot about your work, your art today. For anyone listening now who isn't already familiar, where can we direct them to? Where can we point them towards? How can they connect with you?
Well, I know I mentioned I want to delete my Instagram, but check out my Instagram, which is at Maclin, Maclin. And from there, you'll find a link to the book that we've discussed this whole time. And my website has a good amount of information about all my other projects I've worked on.
Amazing, man. Thank you so much for your time today. I could talk to you for hours. I think you're a fascinating human being. You brought a lot of insight to the show. I really appreciate it. It's been worth the wait, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for following up. I really appreciate it. It's great.